Welcome to the Final Takeaways Podcast Edition, episode 27. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get to it right away. What should have been a night of medical urgency turned into one of the most disgraceful breaches of trust in Guyana's healthcare history. 20-year-old orthopedic technician Trevair Sinclair has been remanded to prison after allegedly recording and leaking a video of singer Lolita Callendar, also known as Lola Doll. This as doctors worked frantically to save her life after she was gunned down earlier this month.
Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody and stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.
Can you imagine how you would feel if this happened to you or a family member? Getting video recorded without your consent while you're sick or in an otherwise vulnerable state at this hospital or any other hospital for that matter. Can you imagine how you would feel? But getting back to the alleged perpetrator. On September 29, 2025, that's yesterday, Sinclair was charged under the Cybercrime Act of Guyana and pleaded not guilty in court. But his defiant demeanor, combined with the horrifying allegations, has ignited a storm of outrage across the country. We're reliably informed that Sinclair was brought before the court after Lola Doll pressed charges. And for those of you who are now getting caught up with this story, let me give you a quick recap of what happened. Almost at midnight on September 6, 2025, a lone gunman opened fire on Lolita Callendar, also known as Lola Doll, who is a popular social media influencer. She was caught off guard while she was reversing to park a car, right when a man opened fire, leaving her clinging to life. Whether it's by fate, whether it was by miracle, she survived the attack. However, while doctors were trying to save her life at the hospital, we're told that Trevair Sinclair allegedly video recorded Lola Doll's privacy and leaked the video onto social media. So far, 3 men were arrested but later released on bail in connection with the attack on Lola Doll. 2 of them were arrested for attempted homicide. Up to the time of producing this video, the police had not yet determined a motive or charged anyone else. That being said, even though Sinclair is being held accountable under the law, this story is bigger than this guy. Stick around as we break down everything to help you see that this goes deeper than surface level reporting covering this story, and it exposes what else may have been hiding in plain sight. Here's our first key question. Is this the first time a patient's privacy has been violated in this manner? Or has this sinister act been going on for a while, but is only now being exposed on such a grand scale? If so, who else is a victim? And was there a cover-up, and who's responsible for the cover-up if so? I can tell you right now about a recent case of an alleged hospital leak. You guys may remember a Georgetown hospital nurse, Tiana Lewis King, who was thrown into the lockups for allegedly leaking the private details of Adriana Young's autopsy. Do you remember that individual and that case? And it also involved allegations against the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony. Remember that case? Enough said. Whatever happened to that case, we need to follow up on that. What do you think? Getting back to Trevair Sinclair and Lola Doll, let me know in the comment section whether you think Lola should sue for damages. We'll tell you what the bold social media personality said about Sinclair being sent to prison to await trial. Alrighty guys, in addition to that, we'll discuss the shocking betrayal and violation of a patient's privacy at a time when the patient was clinging to life, and we're talking about Lola Doll here. We're going to explore allegations of the hospital's dirty little secret, the cover-up allegations, whether Sinclair is being treated as a convenient scapegoat to mask the bigger issue of patient privacy violations at the Georgetown hospital. And last but not least, should Lola sue, plus the potential for monetary compensation for a successful tort claim for invasion of privacy or breach of confidence depending on the laws protecting patient privacy in Guyana. As for Lola, she's still recovering from the ordeal, the near-death experience, as she put it, even though she remains active on social media. In fact, yesterday she told her followers exactly how she feels about this invasion of privacy. Writing on her social media yesterday, the woman said, quote, "Not because I wasn't saying anything at all while on Facebook means it doesn't bother or affects me. How can you be working at the hospital, take your phone out to video a vulnerable woman fighting for her life? Y'all do anything for 2 likes, but I'm not the Lola I used to be back in the days. I would have left it alone, but today I decided to press charges." Here's where the story explodes. Sinclair wasn't even scheduled to work that night, yet somehow he gained access to the emergency room. Anonymous hospital staff say there's no way he acted alone. Someone had to open the door for him or look the other way, one insider told us. Even more disturbing are whispers that Sinclair may not be the first to exploit vulnerable patients at the hospital. He's just the first one that got caught or was exposed. Phones are everywhere. Staff film things all the time. This isn't new, another whistleblower claimed. The hospital only called in the police after the video went viral online, sparking suspicions of a cover-up. Multiple employees allege that senior administrators initially urged silence, hoping the scandal would fade before it reached the public. Management didn't want this blowing up. They were more worried about the hospital's reputation than the patient's rights, one staff member alleged. If true, this points to a systemic failure, where protecting the institution mattered more than protecting the patient. The Guyana Police Force has charged Sinclair with transmitting of a private area of a person under the Cybercrime Act. But critics argue this charge is far too narrow. It's convenient. They pin it all on him. And the hospital escapes deeper scrutiny, one activist told our podcast team. Calls are growing for an independent public inquiry into whether patient privacy violations are being systematically ignored, or worse, quietly enabled.
Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain, pulling them.
This scandal is no longer just about one rogue hospital employee. It raises damning questions, such as how many patients have been secretly filmed. Guys, this could happen to you or your family member or a loved one or a friend. Can you imagine if this happened to you, how you would feel? Or anyone you love? The other questions are, who else has access to these recordings? Is there an underground trade in leaked medical footage? And how deep does the corruption within the Georgetown hospital really go? For Lola Doll, the trauma is doubled, recovering from bullet wounds while also enduring a grotesque violation of her dignity. Now let's talk about compensation and remedies for Lola Doll. Based on available information, Lola could likely pursue a civil lawsuit under Guyanese law. And before we continue, here's our disclaimer. What we're about to say, what I'm about to say or to explain, isn't legal advice and should not be taken as such. What I'll do is lay out a potential legal path for a remedy and what it might look like. Here's a breakdown of what Lola Doll could do under Guyanese civil law to seek justice and damages for the privacy violation, meaning the video that was recorded and shared on social media. And get this, she could argue that the act was committed by the hospital vicariously through its staff member, Trevair Sinclair. In fact, the woman may have multiple legal avenues. She may be able to sue on one or more of the following grounds. There is the invasion of privacy or breach of confidence ground, or vicarious liability of the hospital. There could also be a data protection law claim, negligence by the hospital, and or possibly constitutional or human rights claims. But of course, like any other litigant, she would need to prove her case. To succeed, she'd likely have to prove several things. For example, that she had a legal right to privacy in those circumstances. That is to say, her being in the emergency room meant she was owed confidentiality and protection. She could also argue that Sinclair's recording and sharing was wrongful, not protected, not consented outside any permissible scope. The other thing she could argue is that the hospital had sufficient control or responsibility over Sinclair. That is to say, was he acting in his own capacity, or did the hospital allow or fail to prevent the act? And based on all of that, she could argue that there were damages, emotional distress, reputational harm, or perhaps even financial loss, if that's applicable. And last but not least, there's a possibility that she could argue that existing data protection privacy laws were breached. That's if they apply, in this case, under Guyanese law. If successful, she could receive damages and other remedies, and damages would be like compensation, for example. But the success would depend heavily on how the courts interpret the scope of privacy rights. Also, how the court applies vicarious liability in cases like this, how strong the data protection law is in practice, and last but not least, the evidence that Lola can bring. For example, the proof of the hospital's oversight, the role of staff, emotional or reputational harm, etc. And of course, if she's successful at bringing a legal suit against the hospital or the employee, and at this point, you'll recognize that the big fish would be the hospital, because Trevair Sinclair, the guy who allegedly video recorded and leaked the video, we don't know his financial status, but he is probably a man of straw, as they say in law. So the bigger fish would be the hospital corporation. And if Lola is successfully at bringing a litigation against the hospital for breach of privacy, then the remedies could include financial compensation for emotional distress, harm to her reputation, and of course, the privacy violation. She could also receive compensation for things like mental suffering and or special damages if she can prove specific financial losses due to this crime, the cybercrime of leaking the video of her privacy. And so if Lola decides to go this route, she will need a lawyer, obviously, and of course that attorney can argue her case and potentially help her to have a successful outcome. The attorney could also seek punitive or exemplary damages and also an injunction by the court to order or prevent further sharing of the video or removal of the video from the internet or social media. Alrighty guys, we are eager to see how this case will evolve, and we could potentially see a new legal precedent as well. No matter how you twist it or turn it, Lola's privacy has been violated in the most egregious way you can think about. Imagine that. Imagine someone's privacy being recorded and put out on social media. Imagine this happening to someone you know, someone you love. It's maddening, okay? This is not something that you can take back once it's leaked out there. So we hope that Lola gets justice, not only for this leak, not only for the grotesque invasion of her privacy, but also for the attempted homicide on her life. But getting back to the privacy violation, the legal question that remains to be answered is who should be held accountable. Should it be the employee, the hospital employee only, or the hospital and the employee? And who should pay the bigger cost in terms of justice for Lola Doll? Is it Sinclair alone, or will the courts hold the Georgetown Public Hospital accountable as well? Stay tuned for what's coming up next.